Well, welcome, Dr. Christian. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here with us today. First of all, congratulations for being selected as a critical scholar between the Association of Multicultural Counseling and Development and the Adult Development and Aging Association as well. So we're very, very fortunate to have you. Could you please give us an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for the honor and the invitation. I do not take that lightly. And so I'm always excited to be around not just my colleagues, but those who I really admire and look up to in the field and in the profession. So again, my name is Dr. Tasha Christian. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am a director of operations here in Central Virginia for a community counseling agency. I'm also an adjunct faculty member. And in addition to that, I'm an active member of ACA, AMCD, AADA, and also the Virginia Counselors Association. And I'm honored to serve as the past president for the Virginia Association for Multicultural Counseling and Development, or VAMCD, which is the state division for AMCD. I received my doctorate from Argosy University in 2017 in counselor education and supervision. And my research and professional focus is really on generational trauma and how it impacts the Black American community, most throughout the lifespan.
Wow. Well, thank you again. It's such an honor to have you with us. And with that, I will go straight into our questions. And the first question that I have for you says, describe the value of multiculturalism in the work that you do.
So, the way I describe multiculturalism is I think it's the seminal, it's the foundational work of understanding an individual's intersectionalities. Sometimes we use multiculturalism and social justice interchangeably, and they don't mean the same thing. I think it's vital that you understand multiculturalism first. And what I think for me, the value in my work that I do is that it gives an opportunity for whether it's the practitioner, a student, or a trainee to really identify, number one, their own biases and how that impacts their decision making, but it also paints a picture of an individual's intersections. And then it also does that on a larger global scale. For instance, in all of our textbooks, we know that in every chapter, there's usually, that one paragraph that says, consider the cultural or multicultural implications, which is fine, but it's more than that. It is literally, multiculturalism is understanding the lens of that particular demographic, that particular intersection. So for me, it's vital that I understand not just my staff, not just my clients, but the communities in which we serve. And I believe in servant leadership. So I always say it's not about the communities and the clients that we're counseling, it's the communities that we're actually serving. And that understanding of multiculturalism will look different. It's not just about race and ethnic identity. It may be religion, socioeconomic status, age, accessibility to services, physical abilities or lack thereof. And I think that part is so important. And I say that because when you're able to conceptualize the lens of a particular identity or intersection, it allows for two things. If you are the counselor, it allows for a stronger counseling relationship. If you are a counselor educator or researcher, it allows for more rigor in your work because you're able to speak from the lens of a group of people. It's not just about a paragraph anymore, but it's literally about conceptualizing and understanding an entire group of people. And also understanding that within that group of people, there are individual intersections in that as well. Oftentimes, we talk about multiculturalism with a broad brush, a broad stroke, and it's not. We have one chapter that says understanding the Asian American community, understanding the Black American or African American community, understanding the Latinx community. that is unfair to an entire community of people to read one chapter and believe that you are culturally aware enough to understand them. And so in my work, what I have committed to is constantly educating and constantly teaching, whether it's staff members, whether they're counselors, community members, community partners, legislative officials, because again, those who make the laws um, oftentimes don't understand the lens of multiculturalism. And so for me, because I've made it my life's work to talk about communities of color and marginalized groups, I can't ignore educating all stakeholders of those groups. And so multiculturalism for me is just, it's that foundation. We can't talk about social justice until we have an understanding of each intersection.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I like the fact that you said it's the foundation upon which we will build everything else basically, and how we understand and ethically and competently, I guess, work with the clients that we serve.
Absolutely.
You know, so
And
thank you for
that's
that.
just the vital part for multiculturalism. It is, I tell people it's, for instance, skills is extremely helpful. We know the important part of skills, but we also have to understand theories, right? Because the theories is oftentimes what guides the skill. When we are in assessment courses and we're teaching assessment, we have to also remain true to the theories. We have to remain true to our skills. We have to remain true to understanding the multicultural lens as well. And I think that is literally at the foundation of what we do as counselors.
Absolutely. And you kind of played off of this or a little bit too, and which goes into the second question of social justice. So what role does social justice play in your work?
So I would say that I have, anecdotally, let me say that, I made a conscious choice about 2 years ago to become far more committed to social justice. I live in Virginia, and I had become disheartened because so many people that look like me were receiving care that was not of quality. And so for me, I had to make some decisions. So, could I go full-time into education, but still recognize that the people literally in my community are not receiving what they deserve and what I've gone to school for and practiced? Or could I be more in the community? And so I made that choice. And I'm happy with that choice because people who look like me are now accessing services at a higher rate. I love the fact that I have so many colleagues who have waiting lists now for counseling and for clients, because it means something. That means that people are reaching out. That means that people are acknowledging that it's okay to get help. But what it also means is that from a social justice lens, we're doing more work, and that work is actually sticking and resonating with individuals. And so for me, social justice really says that we have to create action items to make sure that those who are often unheard and oppressed feel heard. Now, recognizing that every person who feels unheard is not going to come to the state, legislative house. That's the role for counselors and counselor educators. Our role is to hear the lived experience, to hear the story, to conceptualize that individual story, and then explain to the other stakeholders, number one, the implications of inaction, and number two, the benefits of action. That's our role. And so for me, that is what I have taken on. So here in the Commonwealth, we're hopefully going to pass some legislation to talk about mental health as diversion and not secondary. So our goal would be for individuals who are experiencing a psychiatric crisis to receive mental health treatment as opposed to incarceration. And the hope is that we do that. And that's social justice work. Now, social justice does not just have to be a protest. That's not it. It's policy. It's what we do in the classroom. it's educating the next generation of counselors to understand, to conceptualize from a lens that is different than their own. For instance, and we talk about this, there's privilege in our education, right? I recognize that privilege. So there are times when I have to see the lens of an individual who's marginalized from an SES standpoint, from a socioeconomic standpoint, because we may share a similar lens in being marginalized as Black people. That doesn't mean we have the same lens from a socioeconomic status lens. And so I have to take my privilege lens off and see the lens of marginalized, which is why I love the multicultural competencies, because that is how I frame my social action work. And so for me, that's what social justice does. It gives me the opportunity to hear the experiences of those in the communities that we serve, conceptualize those experiences, and then present that in a scholarly manner. Because oftentimes it's more respected that way. I'll say it like that.
All right. I like the fact of how you frame social justice, but I think it goes back to, again, to that, what you initially said of you being a servant leader, and it's couched in that space of here you are providing care, but more than just providing care, it's that how do you then create change for the betterment of all those people that you serve.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you sharing that, and even just tying into the multicultural competencies of how that frames the work that you do. So with that, going into the third question, why is it important to considering lifespan development when working with the clients that you serve?
So here's the first thing I will say, and I am an advocate of certain courses and discussions just seamlessly transitioning throughout a counseling program. Clearly, multiculturalism is one of them, but I also think that lifespan development is another. Because understanding the lifespan development, or even lack thereof, to me is what helps paint a clinical picture for a counselor. As counselors, and I always tell people this, whether in the classroom or in the community, as counselors, by identity, we believe in a wellness approach and model. And so I am not showing my fidelity to the profession if I don't discuss wellness and what that looks like based upon your chronological age and emotional age. And so what I think that when we consider the lifespan development, number one, it aids us with conceptualizing a diagnostic picture. We would love to say that the diagnosis is not what has to drive us, but in managed care, it is. And for clients too, I think sometimes it gives them an answer to a question that has often gone on for a long time, which is, why am I feeling the way that I feel, or why am I doing whatever I'm doing? And so we would like to not always talk about a diagnosis, but we have to. And so what I think the lifespan development discussion does, it creates a baseline. And so if you are an individual who is 35, but there's something that occurred in your life that really caused you to be stagnant in this area, let's talk about that. Because in our counseling relationship, I'm going to say to you, I hypothesize that maybe because this happened when you were 21, this has impacted the rest of your decisions. Now, what I have found is that with clients, when I do that, they feel a sense of understanding and connection to me. Because number one, I'm going to highlight whatever kind of stopped working for you. But now let's talk about what we can do chronologically, and then what we can do emotionally. And so when we consider the lifespan development, what we look at is not about, well, did you go through all of Erickson's stages? It's not that. That's the classwork part of it. It's really to say you're feeling unfulfilled and unhappy because you are this age and you feel like you have not done the following. Or if we include the cultural component as well, people in your life said for 30 years that you shouldn't get help because there was a stigma associated with it. And number one, look how brave you are to break a generational cycle. Number two, look how brave you are to identify that not getting the help linked to your cultural connections has limited your ability to thrive as an adult. And so that's how we really look at, for me, lifespan development, because I view that as seamless transition, right? When we give a diagnosis to someone, it's really because we're measuring it up against what should a person of this particular age group be doing and what are you not doing. That's how we look at that. The challenge is we don't often talk about lifespan development. And I think we don't talk about it as much because we take one course in it and we put that book to the side. But it is a book, again, like multiculturalism, that is seminal foundational work. We cannot advance as counselors if we don't understand how to conceptualize that to our clients. Our clients come to us with questions. And if we use the lifespan development models and approaches, we can answer some of those questions. The questions that they've sat in silence for a long time to say, why am I unhappy here? Why do I feel anxious here? My friends are all married and having children, and I chose to go to school. So what does this mean for me? When we look at and we include lifespan development and an understanding of that, I think we're able to answer some of the questions that our clients have, which builds the counseling relationship and really improves efficacy in treatment.
I hear you saying, and as you speak, what I keep thinking about is, and this might be just a bias of mine, but the value of qualitative research,
Yes.
you know, and how both the components of multiculturalism and lifespan development really paint a rich picture of that lived experience of the client, so that we could then, as counselors, hopefully better understand what it is that they've experienced, what they're currently experiencing, what they're hoping to experience, and then meet them in that space and providing them with the support they need to move forward in life with whatever desires that they have. So great way how you frame that. I really appreciate that. So thank you. And as we move into our final question that I have for you, it asks, what are some concrete examples that demonstrate how you incorporate multiculturalism as a counselor, as an educator, as a researcher, and as a supervisor? Big question.
So it is, but I sat with this one. This was a good question. And so I would say one of the first things that I thought about is, as a counselor, sometimes we have really great conversations for counselor educators and for researchers, and the counselor is saying, I'm also the one who's in the office, so what about me? Which I appreciate that. And so I say, for the first thing for a counselor to do with incorporating lifespan development and social justice, twofold. For lifespan development, actually have that conversation with clients. We often use lifespan development for clinical assumptions when we're writing up a conceptualization. Have the conversation and bring it in the room with a client. Use lifespan development interventions. And so what I mean is, and I do this, you shared it, I would tell a client, well, why don't you paint a picture for me? You know, we often, if you're psychoanalytic, you are asking about childhood, and that's fine. But they're prepared for the childhood question now. There's been enough YouTube, counseling to show you the childhood question. Let's not talk about that though. Paint a picture for me of what happiness looked like for you. And when was that? Let's talk about that. And when did that stop? And so when that stopped, you were this age, or you were doing this in life. So what worked then, what's not working now? But why don't we spend some time incorporating what can work to bring you that happiness and that wellness, but in an age appropriate manner, right? Because maybe a mandala is not going to work for you when you're getting off of work. Hopefully it will, but maybe it won't. So is it going for a walk? Is it, and again, here's where the social justice part comes in, and I share this. We should really be advocating on the ground level for wellness interventions and funding for wellness, because there's a lot of funding for sickness, not a lot of funding for wellness, right? We get paid when something's not right. We know that. But what about funding to help for wellness approaches? Because that's who we are as counselors. We believe in wellness, right? So if maybe not just, you going for a walk, but let's see if we can find funding to give you a Fitbit, and we're able to track that. And maybe we're able to log emotional responses as well as physical responses. Now, here's where the research part comes in. So if I'm the researcher, I'm going to write a grant for that. I'm going to write a proposal for that, because what I'm going to do is show that there are it's a positive relationship between an increase in physical health and movement and an increase in positive emotional symptoms and wellness, right? So we know that perhaps the more physically active I am, and I'm learning that for myself. I was like, wow, who knew that going to the gym was going to work for me, right? But what I have found is that I feel better, not just physically, but emotionally. So if I'm able to share that, I can write the research on that to say, hey, state, fill in the blank, wherever you are, why don't we advocate some funding for research? And let's have some individuals who are committed. And then what we do, John, like you shared, is we take the qualitative work and we get the lived experiences. What I found was that when I devoted this amount of time every day to physical wellness, whether it's working out or whether it's being present and meditating, I found that I began to feel better in other areas of my life. I found that I interacted with my family in a more positive way. I felt more heard. I developed a new support system. As counselor educators, it's important that we teach our counselors how to do that, because our counselors are here and they're saying, I didn't learn that in the classroom. So we have to be different in our courses. We recognize we have accreditation, and we recognize that certain classes have to look a certain way. They're going to be certain assignments. That does not mean, however, that we cannot incorporate a foundation, a theme, a clinical theme into the work that we do. And so that's my recommendation for how we take one thing as simple as exercise and working out, and we're able to show lifespan development, because exercising at 15 is far different than at 39, okay? When you have a mortgage and you got to get groceries and you're in the midst of a global pandemic and civil unrest, and you want me to go for a walk, and I'm angry with everyone I meet. And I'm angry at work because if I raise my voice, I'm the angry Black woman. And I don't know what to do now. And I can't talk to my family because my family said that if you just go to church and pray, you're not going to feel this way anymore. And I did that, and it's not working. How do we tell that individual it can work if you trust this process? We've got to meet that individual where she is. We have to recognize developmentally where she may have regressed. She may be far more advanced socioeconomically. That doesn't mean that she is emotionally. And then now we have to hear her lens of being a marginalized individual. And we can take that one individual and incorporate lifespan development and social justice as a counselor, as a researcher, and as a counselor educator.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that last bit where you just framed everything and you just put it all together in the one picture and say, this is why we need counselors to be doing the work that we do in caring for the individuals that we do care for, because there's so many layers of what's going on in the lived experiences that our clients ourselves are experiencing. And I think, again, the multiculturalism in and of itself, the competencies for that, as well as just looking across the lifespan of the individual,
Absolutely.
really help us to gain that better understanding that we do need, so that we can come from it from an informed place, as opposed to just what we think should be happening. And I really do value the fact that you said, within that wellness framework, how is it that we are not also looking to be more, having grant funding opportunities as well, for us to be more preventive, which is what the
Right.
framework that we come from, as opposed to being reactive and trying to say, how do we patch up this break within the system,
Absolutely.
that we're experiencing right now. So I really do think that that was very helpful. Well, as we wrap up, are there any other final comments that you would like to share before we close off the interview?
I'm excited for this. I think that this will create wonderful resources for those who watch, whether it's a counselor, an emerging practitioner, counselor educators. And I don't say it because we're in this interview, but literally this is what guides my work. This is my passion. And I've learned that I look at multiculturalism and lifespan development as the art and the science, right? And so, the art to counseling is what we bring into it. It's our passion. Well, we do have to understand the science behind it. And so we can't put those books on the shelf to never open again. I stress that all the time. We have to understand lifespan development, how it impacts our communities and our clients. And then we also have to understand the multiculturalism part, because we can't get the social justice without understanding that lens. Keep the competencies and keep your lifespan books just kind of easily accessible. Mine are right beside me, actually. So do that. That's my tip, my recommendation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Christian. Thank you so much on behalf of AADA and AMCD for being willing to share your expertise with us, with our community, counseling community. Hopefully, for the viewers that are going to be seeing this, there's going to be information as to how to contact Dr. Christian if you need to reach out to her, and also get in framework as to what other good work she's been doing in the field on behalf of our profession. So again, thank you again for being here. Thank you again for sharing yourself and your expertise with us. And we look forward as organizations within ACA, AADA, AMCD to continue to see the great work that you will continue to put out into your communities, both locally at the state level, but also nationally too, as you continue to make the counseling profession a good one, a great one, and for us to be proud of the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harrison. I am excited for you and all the work that you are doing. I say it because I want to just kind of speak it into existence for you. I'm excited about where you're getting ready to go next. And so I think that national leadership is next for you. Just telling you that because you too have a servant's heart and are really passionate about making sure that our communities are heard. The work that you have done just now in New York, I say this as a Black woman. I thank you for that, for sharing, for being so present with the state association and with the advocacy in just our current times. We need that, and I thank you for that. So I may thank you privately for that, but I always want to make sure that those who I know are our allies, I always want to thank you publicly for that as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching.